Hey there, I'm Reverend Dan. We are Soul Evolution Collaborative, a nonprofit based in universal spiritual principles, offering possibilities for navigating the evolution of life in an authentic and intentional way. And this is Truth Be Told 2.0, a weekly series that is looking to change the norms, bringing you inspiring and uplifting messages to look at life a little bit differently. So, the last few weeks, we have been looking at love. What has love got to do with it, right? What is love? Maybe what we've learned about love that it actually isn't, the ways love shows up, the things we've been taught about love. And so today we're going to continue that and look at love and judgment. How does judgment play into love? Can you love something and also judge it at the same time? I think judgment is kind of one of those like icky words in a lot of places that, well, you're not supposed to judge people, right? So we're going to talk about that, kind of get down into the meat of that. What really is judgment? What does it have to do with love, if anything? And what do we do with it? So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Truth Be Told 2.0. So I think often judgment is taught to us as this, like, don't judge anybody. Judgment is wrong. And if you're judging things, you can't love them, and you're supposed to love everyone, everything. And I don't know that is the whole thing. Like, that seems really reductionistic, if that's
Yeah.
a word.
Yeah.
Like it's this absolutism, right? And absolutism tends to, or maybe always, creates duality, like one or the other. And if you don't do like, everything else is out of the picture. So what is the truth about judgment?
What is the truth? What interesting. We had talked about, this idea of judgment being this kind of had this bad sort of taste or flavor when we talk about it. But then, in spiritual communities, we also talk about discernment, and somehow that is this
That's okay.
that's where it's at. And I think that they are the same thing, right? And I think that we are conditioned to judge. I mean, that's how we relate to our world. We look at something and we're categorize it safe, not safe, good, bad, all those sorts of things. And so I think that the act of looking at something, and especially when we look at things in the world, things are going on, and we're like, wow, that is not okay. That system, that framework, that way that we're marginalizing or disempowering, that is not okay.
Yeah.
And that's a judgment. And you know what? That's a necessary thing. And so I think that this conversation of love and judgment, it's not like they're polar opposites. Yeah, one or the other, right? It's not like a light switch, love or judgment, love or judgment. But I think that we can have these judgments and we can have this discernment around things, especially things that need to change or things that we need to be more active in reversing some of the effects. And I think that it is the way in which we carry out that, right? And so if we see something in the world, we're like, man, that shit right there. And then we're kind of like this bull in a china shop sort of impact. Yeah, that sort of the way the judgment shows up may not be benefiting the overall situation, but I think that we can use love and this judgment, which we do naturally. We can really infuse them in such a way that it really empowers us to stand for the things that we need to stand for, to stand up for the things, to stand against the things, to empower. I think that a beautiful marrying of judgment and love, I think, really can be a catalyst for some really amazing things. And that's kind of what I get it. I do have to kind of, like you said, strip off that old sort of
Right.
judge not lest you be judged sort of
Yeah.
stuff
Right.
around it. Yeah. So that's kind of what comes up for me right off the bat with this
Yeah.
topic.
Well, I love that idea that it's not an either or, and they may not even be related in that, like, they're not even the same spectrum. Like, they're different planes of, I don't know, emotion or thought or something. and yeah, like stripping away all the stuff that I've learned about judgment and how bad it is, and yet it's like that safety thing. Like we inherently judge the scenario that we're in to deem whether it's safe or not. I mean, that's like some of the oldest part of our brain. I don't think we're getting rid of that anytime soon.
No,
And
not
that
for
has nothing to do with whether I love where I am or not, or can love the people around me or not. And actually, I think a lot of that judgment may come from love. Like, well, it just reminds me of like some of the gratitude stuff we've looked into, and how gratitude is like the precursor for compassion, and
yeah.
how we're hardwired for that. Like our brains are actually wired for that response mechanism, so that when we do a thing, other people act in a certain way towards us because we did that thing. And so we create tighter bonds and tighter community. And I'm actually wondering that maybe judgment is similar to that. Like,
Mm.
are we as a group safe? And some of the stuff coming up in the world today, it's like we might need to judge a little more closely some of the things that are happening in the world around us, because some of them are not safe. Some of those things could potentially be very dangerous for a lot of people. And so judging what needs to be judged in the way that it might need to be judged might actually be a very loving act.
Yeah, if judgment is seen as it just popped in my brain exactly when you said that. Like, if judgment could be viewed in the way that we're talking about it as like intentional action,
Yeah.
intentional perception of something. Like if we have this intention of looking at something and judging if it's beneficial or supportive or not. I think that judgment is a really important part of this concept of love, because I think that when we employ that, we have to have these judgments of like how I'm showing up in the world. Is that being perceived in a loving way? How
Yeah.
I'm interacting with individuals. How am I showing up? How's that being perceived? Judging my impact on others, and also judging their impact on me. And,
Right.
and there's
Yeah.
some spaces and situations where, like, you know what, this is not serving me, and
Yeah.
I'm making a judgment call. When we do that, we're making a judgment call. This is
Yeah. Somehow that's okay.
right, right. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that
Mm.
we get into talking about judgment. I think the concept that gets often used is this kind of othering, and so that's where we've locked into judgment as this othering.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, sometimes it can be, but I think there's it's a much more nuanced conversation than like don't judge. Well, that's like
Good luck.
don't breathe, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think it is what we do with it. I think that is
Yeah.
also the intention behind it.
Yeah.
I think it is the impact, and sometimes it's not even the intention, is the impact, because what we talked about it before, intention over impact. So we have to
Yeah.
also look at that as well.
Well, and isn't that absolutism? I mean, that like,
Right.
don't do this thing because then you might be enticed to doing these other things, or
Right.
like, don't judge because then you might not control yourself
Yeah.
how you judge and what you do with the judge. Right? Like, it's like, don't do the thing. Like, well, judgment's not really the problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's what we're doing with it. And yeah, yeah,
So instead of either or, it's like a both and. We kind of,
yeah,
I think we do get caught into this, like you said, absolutism, this either or thinking, because that's what we're conditioned, this or that,
yeah,
right
yeah,
or wrong.
yeah,
And I think almost like life does not necessarily exist in this either or thinking. I think it exists most often in this sort of both and understanding. And I think that
yeah.
um,
It's a spectrum.
understanding how that, yes.
We're bringing it back. Everything's a spectrum.
But even then, someone told me, I used that in a conversation the other day when we were talking about absolutism. And I was like, well, it's a spectrum. And the individual said, but even in a spectrum, there's an absolute, because there's a beginning and an end. There's a front and a back. And so even a spectrum has a hint of that as well. So I was like, oh,
Hmm.
now we're going to have to think of another thing to say than a
Yeah,
spectrum.
yeah,
Because I think it's like they described it as like there's like infinity on both ends, because there's so many different
yeah, yeah.
variations to life,
Right.
more than we could even possibly kind of like talk about in these sort of like terms.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting. I think that
Hmm.
to understand the nuance of our behavior, understand the nuance of our interactions, I think that's what this love and judgment conversation is about, to understand the value and
Yeah.
how they can really support one another.
Yeah. And I think that leads us into like the comfort conversation.
Yeah.
We tend to not like nuance, and probably because all of us, I would say all of us, everyone has been raised in either or, A or B. And if it's not A or B, we're like,
I don't know
here,
what to
the
do.
in between, the squidgy middle. We don't like it. We don't
Yeah,
know what to do with it,
yeah,
And we're so not used to it. We're so not wired or taught to think that way. We can get really uncomfortable when we don't know, really uncomfortable with the unknown, right? And I think in some ways, then the idea of insisting that others don't judge actually becomes a manipulation tactic, because it's like we don't want others to see the nuance. We just want it to, it's all fine, everything's fine and great. And if you don't see it as fine and great, well, then that's on you. What's in your consciousness? That's on
right,
you, right?
right.
When in reality, looking for the nuance, I think actually means we care more than if we were to just accept and believe in, oh, it's all fine, right?
Yeah, and I
I,
think judgment calls us for this continued review of
yeah,
our values and beliefs and how we show up,
yeah,
not only
yeah,
individually, collectively, even as like communities of folks. And I think that becomes sometimes uncomfortable because we don't want to do that. I mean, because it
yeah,
is that discomfort of like that growing and doing a new thing or thinking a new way of thinking or a new system of belief or a framework of
yeah,
belief.
yeah,
But I think that's what's necessary, and that love is not static. It has this evolutionary sort of
yeah,
action, and so judgment helps us keep that moving. I think because we
yeah,
can begin to really evaluate and reevaluate and reevaluate.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
It's
think
a journey.
I think following that nuance, embracing what might seem uncomfortable,
Yeah,
actually brings us to, if when we can allow ourselves to do that, I think actually brings us to a deeper level of being able to love.
yeah,
uh if we can move past everything is fine into what's actually going on, I can understand you better, you understand me better, we can be in a deeper relationship, we actually are on the same page about what's going on, hopefully, potentially.
right.
And it actually opens up, I think it opens up the door to a whole other experience of what life and love can really be,
Mhm.
when we are willing to step out of that
Yeah, yeah.
absolutism.
Which is, it's comfortable. Absolutism is
Yeah,
comfortable because we think we know where we stand, but
yeah,
it's kind of it's a trickster because there's no such thing as that, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for
It's a
sure.
dirty dog.
It is, yes, yes. So beware absolutism, I guess. Be very judgmental about absolutism. No, I don't know. Hopefully you have gotten some things to think about from this conversation about love and judgment, and maybe some things to pick apart, which absolutism says don't do, and we are suggesting maybe we do. Maybe we pick apart some of the things we have learned about love and judgment. I definitely know I have some things to pick apart, so hopefully you do too. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's in the comments, like, subscribe, whether you email us with questions, whatever it is. We would love to hear from you about this topic, or really any others, any of the videos we put out, any of the content. And if you're looking for more of this content, for sure to check out the rest of our Facebook page, Instagram page, our YouTube channel, all the places we got the stuff. Definitely check out our website. There's plenty of material available for you there. And check out our events page at soulevolutioncollaborative.org/events. There is always something going on here for you to jump in and participate. So we would love to see you at any of the upcoming things. And if we don't see you at any of those, we will see you right here next week at Truth Be Told 2.0.